podcast. Hell yeah, brother. Overload, brother. Beats by @SmokeM2D6.
Welcome to a pre-training camp episode of Seattle Overload, where we're going to dive into a mailbag segment. Now, we got lots of nice questions. We're very fortunate, and we will be providing the answers, but over a two-part series because there's so many. So the natural way of doing that is to do it with offense and defense. And we also have some quarterback news to delve into, not directly relevant to the Seahawks, but it does still apply to Seattle's NFL team. I say we because, as ever, Griffin and Ty are with us. Griffin, you kick it off. How are you doing? Maybe mix it up this time rather than saying I'm good, you know.
I'm well. How are you doing, Ty?
Well.
Yeah. Grammatically correct for once.
Yeah, I'm well as well. And feeling great, feeling excited for training camp. Let's tap that I'm in sign, boys.
Yeah, we're in. Speaking of grammar, this is a quick one for our the grammarian faction of our listenership. So you know how we have like short vowels and long vowels?
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about Arnold Ebiketie for no reason earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And not that we're going to be talking about Arnold Ebiketie, the one that got away. But so hit the E in the second syllable of his name, the second E rather, is pronounced like a long A. So you have a short E and a short E being right? Then a long E being E.
Mm-hmm.
But then what do you call it when E's are pronounced like a long A? What do you the super long E? So if anybody knows, let us know in the comments. And then we'll address it on the next episode. So I just wanted to throw that out there before I forgot.
We're trying to get smarter
do you mean
here.
The third syllable? Ebiketie.
You're right. Ebiketie. Yeah, you're right. Third syllable.
I say Ketty,
the
not
third E.
Katie. Should I be saying Katie?
It's Katie. Yeah, like an A.
My apologies.
Yeah.
Ket. Are you familiar with Ketty? What if someone was Ketty? What that would mean?
What is that? What does that mean?
Don't worry, it's not suitable for the podcast. So moving on.
British slang.
Yeah. Moving on. Baker Mayfield.
How specific does slang get city to city in England? And does Liverpool have its own slang? Does London have its own slang? York?
Relatively, but then there's a thing of like with different regions, right? Different regions are proud of their slang, which, you know, rightly so.
Right.
But then there's like a kind of negative aspect of people learning, you know, broadcasting English, which is actually really just classist in a way.
Right.
But that's getting sort of
a
bit into the weeds.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right.
Getting into the socioeconomics of England.
Yeah.
Yes. Which classes, you know.
Well, for a long time, the Cockney accent was just like discriminated against almost, right? Like,
yeah, like, well, what I'd say is most accents are discriminated against, and you could probably base that off classism.
Right, but, like as it interweaves into class and everything.
Yes.
Interesting.
So, another talking of classes, Baker Mayfield was the first overall pick in the 2018.
Maddie, please try to stay on topic. Get back to Baker Mayfield, please.
The 2018 NFL draft class, and it was rumored that the Seahawks had interest in him. Now his competitive spirit and his planting the flag, that, you know, that seemed like a kind of a match, right? But then he never actually. It felt to me like the Seahawks' interest was kind of not actually coming from Seattle and was being used to drum up interest in a quarterback who needed a home. And he got traded to the Carolina Panthers for 2024 conditional 5th round draft pick on July 6th. So that kind of is indicative of his stock, right?
Right. Even if they were interested, it didn't make any sense for them to broadcast to the media or the Browns that they were interested. So maybe there was a reality where they actually were like, if he's available for what he ended up being available to Carolina, maybe they actually were eager to make something like that happen.
Yeah.
But we'll never know. But I'm very happy they didn't. I love that for them. Love that for Geno. Like that for Drew too.
Yeah. Good for Drew. Good for Geno. I was always under the impression that them not being interested in like being like, yeah, we're just going with Drew, we're just going with Geno was just kind of a front because they were potentially in just a one-man bidding war. But
right.
I guess it was weird too, because like we had heard things that the Panthers, not we specifically, I'm just saying, like there were rumors out there, reports out there that the Panthers just weren't interested at all. They also drafted Matt Corral. Seemed like that was it. Right. But like
right. The Panthers have this weird roster. Well, who's their GM? Is it Kirkner or Fitterer? I forget which one.
Fitterer.
Scott.
So Fitterer's whole MO seems to be, as GM now, seems to be confirming priors of when he was with Seattle. Like I imagine that his thought process is roughly Seattle's thought process still on certain guys, like as like statements on like personnel, not like how they necessarily value things, because he's strayed a little bit from what Seattle does in terms of valuing certain positions and rostering process. But as far as just what he actually thinks of as a player, as an eval, it's like he went after Mayfield after you said, Matty, Seattle was supposedly interested in him during the draft process. Darnold, Pete Carroll spoke highly of Darnold. I mean, he's going to speak highly of everybody, but also the USC connection. Then, of course, Matt Corral, that's the Lane Kiffin connection. So I imagine he has connections to Lane Kiffin over the years. So it all seems very like self-contained type thinking. I don't know.
So you're questioning sort of how much he actually adapts his initial thought process.
Well, it's like
evidence.
I mean, maybe, but also it's just more of a inconsequential observation, just that it seems he's taking guys, rostering guys that he liked at previous points, which Seattle does too.
So that, I mean, from a Seattle perspective, it's quite annoying because, you know, he signed Stephen Sullivan, which must have been his guy. He kind of poached him.
They took David Moore. Yeah.
They took Moore, but then also, you know, maybe there'll be a trade partner for LJ Collier, which again, that feels very... That felt very a bit like Sullivan. They loved him for his grit. Now, that was in a very different part of the draft, but Collier, perhaps, you know, he felt like a gritty kind of character pick. We've been into that. But yeah, Mayfield-wise, didn't really feel like that much of an upgrade. And I just, with Baker, I don't know why he felt like he had to play through his injury. Like that just ruined the stock that I think he could have had, but he was obviously like not right, and it just terrible down the stretch of 2021. And I mean, the team should have probably tried to protect him from himself and just said no. But then I don't know how that will work in the NFL.
That relationship seemed to get so toxic in Cleveland that
all the players, the whole Odell's dad thing.
Yeah. Stefanski and Baker hate each other apparently. I mean, who knows what's true?
So,
but
I don't get like the Browns' whole thinking on this process, and I know that they kind of had to act fast on. Well, they didn't have to. Like, let's just be clear about that. But they, you know, in their pursuit of Watson, had to act fast to land him. But to do that before addressing anything with Baker put them in such a disadvantageous spot where they were. I mean. Look what they had to do. They had to take on a conditional draft pick, or they got a conditional draft pick and had to take on like $10 million of his contract just to get rid of him. Like I feel like even despite how last year went, this could have went a lot better for them.
Well, I'm surprised that I don't really want to get into their other quarterback decisions this offseason, but I'm surprised they actually managed to get a pick, even if it is conditional. I thought they'd have to give up a pick as well to dump his salary. Right. If it was the Seahawks in the discussion, that's what I was like, get a 6th round pick too. Anyway, so the other quarterback news, which is actually more consequential to the Seahawks, is that divisional rival, the Arizona Cardinals, ended up re-signing Kyler Murray. And then on the surface, this is like, you know, 5-year deal, $230.5 $8.5 million extension with $160 million guaranteed, makes him the second highest paid per year on average quarterback in the NFL. And that's one chunk of the news. So, Griff, how do you feel on Kyler? Is that a problem for Seattle? Should they be afraid of that?
Well, Kyler is he in the right situation, he could put together like top 5 MVP voting like numbers. I mean, that was a weird way to phrase that. I mean, I think Murray's easily. There's so many good quarterbacks right now, but he could easily play his way into the top 10. At most of the year last year, I think he probably was top 10. Arizona definitely had to pay him, so they didn't really have a choice. But I don't take the Cardinals seriously. It's not Kyler, really. I mean, Kyler is an imperfect quarterback like most are. I'm not shaking in my boots with him like I am with some other quarterbacks in the league. But I don't think he's as good as Stafford, for example, in the division. But I don't know. It's just the Cardinals, so long as Kingsbury is there, and they've had a pretty rough offseason, I'm not that worried about it.
What do you think about this clause in the contract that he has to put in 4 hours of independent game study in per week per game?
Yeah, it totally sounds like they're looking for as many caveats as they can find, that if push comes to shove, they can say, hey, you didn't do this, you didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because what the Browns did with Deshaun, I mean, removing his very relevant off the field stuff, but even just giving him a fully guaranteed deal, I can't believe that. But man, but like the fact Kyler didn't get that too, like it's another little note alongside this weird addendum that he can't be he has to be studying. He can't be playing video games or watching television while doing that.
Right.
And that's one part of it, which is a bit odd. Very odd. And then you sort of combine that with the past reports, like Chris Mortensen reported back in February that the situation was an odd vibe between the Cardinals and Kyler, with Murray being described as self-centered, immature, and a finger pointer. And then Murray felt he was the scapegoat for their playoff loss to the Rams. And it's like, well, this is like a bit odd. And it sort of adds to that vibe. And then back in a New York Times article in December, Murray is quoted as saying, I think I was blessed with the cognitive skills to just go out there and just see it before it happens. I'm not one of those guys that's going to sit there and kill myself watching film. I don't sit there for 24 hours and break down this team and that team, watch every game, because in my head, I see so much, which is quite funny. And then it makes you think his potential, which, I mean, in theory is like he's a game-breaking playmaker, right? But it makes you think his potential is a bit more hard-capped than it perhaps could be. We don't really know, but the stuff coming out is not that encouraging. And then you go back to all the stuff Griff mentioned with like the Cardinal situation, where it's like that there's a few things where you know what, you could almost copy and paste the like Russell Wilson analysis in terms of their style of like passing outside the numbers with Kyler, in the sense that, I mean, we've bashed Cliff a bit on this pod for some of his play calling and lack of variety and predictability, but at the end of the day, I feel like with Kyler, you have to kind of run the Kyler Murray offense, right? Like with the Russell Wilson offense, in that there's only so many things he can be good at, which, and he is very good at some of those things. And like Griff said, his potential probably is that of a top 5, even an MVP candidate, right? That being said, the stuff we've seen, along with the reports coming out and, questionable health, which we haven't even got into, but can he be healthy for a full season? It makes it it's not like oh no, they've re-signed him. Really, you could kind of spin it as it's an interesting positive. It'll be good to see play out, I'd say.
Right. Yeah. They make weird free agency decisions too. So with this will make it. I mean, you wonder what their rostering structuring looks like now that they have the QB contract on the books.
And
the next couple of years.
We should say, like, I mean, I sort of touched on it, but like they're just, as well as their front office strategy feeling quite disjointed and sort of, you can't really see a plan. The play calling, like there is one part of it where you're calling plays for Murray, but there's another part where they kind of spam different concepts, but it doesn't really fit together much. It doesn't feel very cohesive. The only time Cliff proved us wrong was when he was calling plays with Colt McCoy.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's sort of spamming a bit of this, bit of that, and really lacks rhythm. And their tendencies are very predictable, which most defenses expose in the second half of seasons. Like that, we've seen the Seahawks do that. Like, and the O-line stinks still. So
yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
Questions, Ty.
All right. Let's do this. Let's get into your questions. So we have 5 kind of offensive, not centric, I guess, oriented, because not all of them are just directly offensive related. So let's get into the first one from @Hawkstrologer. What touchdown to interception ratio do you predict from the Seahawks quarterback room this year, and why? What ratio and or numbers would indicate success from this position group in 2022? Griff, I'll start with you.
Interesting question. I think the ratio will be north of 1.0 touchdowns to interceptions. The goal needs to be, now, I mean, we should look at this on a rate basis, but they're still going to end on it with a volume number, of course. I think they need to stay below 15 interceptions, and they need to get as close to 20 as they can, basically 20 to 15, preferably, something approaching a ratio of like 2, basically. 2 touchdowns for every 1 interception is the goal. 20-10 should be the goal. Or that'd be a happy ending point with the talent. Now, touchdowns are still weird because you're trying to get to the end zone, to the red zone, as often as you can, and at that point, that's where running the ball can be really advantageous, especially on the goal line. So it can be kind of a funky way of looking at it. But really, so that said, the main talking point is, can Geno or Lockett keep the interceptions down? And historically, for both of them, that's been a major concern. There's a lot of factors though that get you from A to B in terms of how many interceptions you end on, and we're going to really get into a lot of that with some of these other questions. But I think get as close to 10 as possible on the interceptions, get as close to 20 as possible on the touchdowns. Should be the realistic, plausible goal. Internally, they're probably thinking shoot for the stars, land on the moon type thinking. But what do you think, Matty, Ty?
Well, Matty. An interesting comparison, actually, going back to 2011 when the Seahawks finished 7-9, right? And I like to go back to 2011 a bit more than 2010 because, as we've said on this, but the 2022 roster, we're in 2022 now, is in a really good position. We feel very bullish about the 2022 roster, apart from a quarterback. Now, there's weak points like most rosters. There's areas that still like to upgrade, but generally, like there's a lot, and particularly on the offense, with how we feel about the offensive line, the quarterback's coming into a good situation. So rather than going back to 2010 Seattle, 2011 feels more valid. Heck, I mean, the defense doesn't quite have the roots of a 2012 unit, but there are some, after another draft maybe. But so 2011. And so 2011, when they went 7-9, Tavares Jackson started 14 of 15 games he appeared in, and he threw 14 touchdowns with a surprisingly high 13 interceptions, which, I mean, ratio-wise, that's not great. Now, I actually feel, and, Marshawn being Marshawn back then, Cable's gelling of an offensive line unit to be an effective run-blocking unit at that point, maybe the situation was better than that, I think. But I think the 2022 roster, 10 years on, is in a better situation to carry a quarterback with Noah Fant, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. But in particular, I think the run game. Now, we spoke about if the offensive line this year is going to have some issues gelling. How long it will take them to find a chemistry and a groove to be an effective run blocking unit to the point that they're blocking at the same or almost as high efficiency as they did down the stretch of last season, where Rashad Penny absolutely exploded. But I think the quarterback, along with, having this kind of offense that we expect to be quarterback friendly, not that 2011 wasn't, but, Waldron should have like a body of plays, which is to lean on, which should bed his quarterback in. I think that, and we know how Pete Carroll stresses the importance of the ball and turnovers. I think the touchdown number might not be high on its own, but I think that 1-0 kind of deal you spoke about, Griffin, or 2-1.
2-1, yeah.
I think that should be achievable.
Right. And if we, sorry, Ty, you got something there?
Well, no, I was gonna say, yeah, I think 2-1 is very much achievable, but I think it also depends on who you think is going to start at quarterback and who's going to be able to hold that job as well. Because I feel a lot more comfortable in Geno, despite some of his turnover issues in the past, to be able to protect the ball better than Drew Lock. Right. So I think if it's Geno at the helm, I think I actually could absolutely see a 18-22 touchdowns, 9-12 interception type of year, and that's fine.
Right. Yeah. Geno's a much easier projection. Drew is just so difficult to. It's difficult to take what Drew has done and try to apply it forward, because even with his bad moments, it's in his good moments, he's all over the place. It's there aren't common themes with him. That's the issue. Like he'll show a pulse in one area, and then you think, okay, well, can you build out of that? But then he'll flatline in that same area later in the same game, and it's like there aren't any different circumstances going on that could have made him show a trend in one area and then not. So he's just a complete like pinball in terms of what you can expect from him in all contexts. Whereas with Geno, even going back to watching him at New York, there are still themes though. There's always everything, what you get, the inputs and outputs, it all makes sense. Or the outputs make sense, give all the inputs. And then it really, we can use his most recent play, the 3.5 games he played for Seattle last year for the Seahawks. In the actual games that he played, I mean, he did a great job taking care of the ball. He had one interception that was the one where Lockett tripped, and then he had one interception that was on a penalty play, a free play essentially, and he knew that, and he just threw a bad ball, which matters, but he knew it was a free play, so he took a risk that maybe he wouldn't in a regular circumstance. And then he had another throw against the Jags game where he kind of put it into harm's way, kind of on a pseudo scramble drill. Lockett came open, and then 2 DBs converged on him, and they were able to swat it down to the ground. That's definitely a play. You run the simulation enough times, that exact play could have ended in an interception frequently enough to say, hey, maybe don't do that right there. But all in all, he took care of the ball. So that's a combination of, mentality and scheme and stuff. But while the scheme, at least what they didn't ask him to put the ball in harm's way a lot, the scheme that we saw is not going to be really up until the Jags game. And even then, the Jags game is still just a hint. What we saw against the Rams and the Saints and the Steelers, like that's not what they're going to be doing this year. They're going to be leaning way more into what they did in the Jags game schematically. And then they're going to build from there. We're going to be seeing even more. So there might be contexts where it requires good process and good anticipation to complete some passes that if you don't have good anticipation on, you might be putting the ball in harm's way, or if you're simply inaccurate. So those will be the factors. But I think, with Locke, it's just you don't even necessarily know what you're going to get until you see it. But with Geno, it's just everything makes more sense as far as what you can expect, good and bad.
I think really what you've spoke to there is why, and we spoke about this before, but why Locke probably doesn't win the job, because I think there's higher likelihood of turnovers. Interestingly, if you look at the 2021 season, and like we're trying to find that kind of 1 to none, 2 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio, Big Ben had Big Ben. He had 22 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. Of course, Pittsburgh went 9-7-1 and made the playoffs. And that was thanks to their defense. Now, I don't think Seattle has nearly the level of pass rush, although it depends how Darrell Taylor develops this year.
Right.
But their defense is, I think, going to be pretty good. And the Steelers don't have those kind of standout marquee cornerbacks either. So that isn't the worst, loose comparison. And then the other interesting guy is Teddy Bridgewater with 18 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. And I know these aren't perfect, but obviously the Broncos went 7-10. Oh, and then finally Jared Goff with 19 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, which the Lions were 13-1, but they didn't have that defense. The Broncos did have that defense, and they couldn't get it done. But they're in a tough division like Seattle, so it's going to be really though. What was the actual question was, what touchdown and why would indicate success from this position group? So is that success if the team goes?
If they are, I'm going to assume if you just presented to me only those two numbers, we could peek into the future. What the touchdowns were, what the interceptions were. If the interceptions can be within that 10 to say 13 range, I'm going to assume, and if the touchdowns are say at 20, I'm going to assume the offense is functionable. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing. If they're throwing a bunch of interceptions, it's probably system failure, because if it's going to work, it's only going to work without interceptions. Now, it doesn't mean it's working with interceptions. It doesn't mean it's working without interceptions. The absence of interceptions doesn't inherently mean it's working, but we'll know it definitely isn't working if they are turning the ball over. It means that the quarterback, it just isn't either a combination of the arm talent isn't there, which it's not just strength, accuracy, or bad decision making. And you need both of those things to not turn the ball over. You need arm talent and you need good decision making. So, and if they're making good decision making, great. But if they don't have the arm talent, then you know what your chances are. It's just not great, and that means they're probably shrinking the offense down, and it's a placeholder quarterback situation, which all things considered is the most likely scenario. So I would harp more on the interception part. I want low interceptions, few interceptions. And then, touchdowns. I mean, it's a weird stat, touchdowns are, but, get as close to 20 as possible, if not north of that.
And also, I think if you see a lot of high interceptions, high touchdown rates, that means something really, really wrong has happened, and the run game just isn't doing anything for you.
That's true. That's true.
Right? So, if you're, I feel like if either one of these quarterbacks, realistically knowing what we know about these guys, if we see them getting into the 25-ish range instead of the 22 to 20-ish range, and they've also thrown like 14, 15 picks, I think that's, I don't know, that's a pretty big signal that something really, really bad's gone.
Right. And they're going to be playing, if they don't have confidence in just their ability to function, they're going to be protecting the clock a lot, or using the clock rather to protect their both sides of the ball. So then we may not even see the volume of snaps to get the volume totals. But
Matty, anything you want to add before we move on to the next question?
Move it on, Ty.
All right, let's do this. Let's do a fun one. Griff, this one I think is mostly for you. Where does Geno align in the subparticle Kirk scale? Is he a 0.5 Kirk? This is from @Mac1 Jordan.
Mac1 Jordan.
What is the Kirk scale? I don't get it. It seems stupid.
Yeah,
you don't know what the
explain it to us.
What did you say? You don't know what the subquartile particle scale is?
No.
The subquartile scale, subquartile particle scale.
It's catchy.
Is a very highly serious method of measuring quarterbacks and then comparing them. But some quarterbacks are only found to be composed of certain types of scales, certain types of subquartile atomic particles, of which the most common one, of course, is the Kirk subquartile atomic particle. Kirk Cousins also, of course, being 1.00 Kirks. But so, yeah, we got Kirk quarterbacks. There's this cluster of quarterbacks in the league that are considered to be at worst franchise caliber quarterbacks, and at best kind of knocking on the door of like that second tier of quarterbacks in the league. And you can, if you have a good supporting cast around them, you can score a lot of points with them. But who are these guys? We got, of course, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, I think Derek Carr, you throw in there, Jimmy Garoppolo, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, and then like Mac Jones now, right? Did I miss anybody obvious? So I think that's it. And now of that group, you can kind of separate them. I mean, Kirk, Carr, and Tannehill are well above the other guys. But the point being, though, is, I mean, Jared Goff, they had an elite passing offense with Jared Goff at quarterback. The 49ers have an elite passing offense, at least efficiency, and most years anyway, with Jimmy Garoppolo. You deconstruct these quarterbacks into like what they actually are, their skill set, their arm talent, their style, etc. All things considered, I genuinely think that Geno Smith is more talented than Jared Goff. I think that he's more talented than Jimmy Garoppolo, all things considered, or at least his aggression downfield. He's taking advantage of his own talents more than Jimmy does. And I also think he's a better arm talent than Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield probably, when he puts his whole body into throws, probably has the most arm strength of those non-Cousin Tannehill Carr guys. But Mayfield can't control his velocity very well to shorter parts of the field. So getting into what Geno actually is, I mean, we'll just use this question to kind of scout Geno, I guess. Getting into what he is, he has average arm strength. He has average arm strength with well above average accuracy, I think, in the 20 to 30 yard range. The ball throwing deep sideline throws, like deep, like 40 yard plus balls. That's where his accuracy tends to die. That's where his fade ball tends to die. But he can be incredibly accurate on explosive throws in that 20 to 30 yard range. Within that, he's the type of guy that is trying to operate in the pocket, and he's trying to make accurate throws and anticipate things over the middle, in the intermediate. He's trying to work concepts as designed. So stylistically, you can group him with a guy like Goff or Jimmy Garoppolo. But he, unlike Jimmy, is willing to push the ball downfield, and he can do so accurately. And then unlike Goff, he simply has a stronger arm than Goff. And then I think you can further make now Geno.
Can I get into that real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Also, his poise in the pocket is a lot calmer than either of those when the bombs are going off. Like his ability to move up in the pocket, and deliver the throw, but also react to like a changing post snap picture. Like the intelligence you mentioned from pre-snap, and that kind of understanding of the concept. I think that's more than Goff. Where I think Goff understands what's right and wrong, but it's very. I'm not sure as advanced as Geno is.
Right, and on that point, another thing that separates them is, while I said that Geno like overall has average arm strength, and I mean truly average, not like You know, sometimes we use the word average when a guy's really below average.
Average for an NFL quarterback, a starting NFL quarterback.
Right. Like, I really think he's in that 14 to 18 range. I don't think he's in like below that. But another thing that separates him is when Goff gets moved off his spot, when pressure's on him, like Goff can make some throws if his feet are set, if he can keep his base. But if he has to move in the pocket and he has to throw and he can't set his base kind of off platform, but he's not necessarily scrambling, just off platform, his accuracy evaporates. If he can reset, his accuracy's fine. But even when he has to rush his feet to reset, the accuracy still isn't there. Geno is not very accurate when he's off base. Like, he's not good throwing when he can't keep his feet the way he wants to. But what he is good at, where this is where he's separate from Goff, is that he's pocket athletic enough to when he has to reset his feet, he can do it quickly enough to get into his base quicker, whereas Goff can't. So he can still get to, if pressure moves him, he can move with the pressure in the pocket and reestablish himself quickly so that he can get to his peak arm strength, whereas Goff can't get into his own peak arm strength quickly in the pocket. And that's a principle that further allows Geno to operate at his peak arm strength, because, again, like Mayfield can get into his peak arm strength, but he has to throw his whole body into it. Moving in the pocket and stuff, that's where his accuracy can also die. Jared Goff has enough peak arm strength to be operable. Like, that's what the Rams showed, but that's only if they can keep him completely protected. So that's where, as a talent, I genuinely think that Geno is right up there with a lot of these guys. If we look further and kind of dig back into his career, yeah, he was bad with the Jets. I won't say anything else, but he did have considerable year 1 to year 2 improvement. They add in Brandon Marshall, and then his jaw gets broken. And so he's kind of been like frozen in time ever since his second year. He never got that year 2 to year 3 development. And I think in that year 2, he was the same age as Ryan Tannehill was, I think, in Tannehill's rookie year. And Tannehill eventually had massive improvement from year 2 to year 3. And he did that, I think, a whole year older than Geno. So we never really got to see Geno. He was a guy that always needed to develop. We never really got to see that year 3. And those Jets were horrible. And he improved in spite of his supporting cast from year 1 to year 2, as marginal as that improvement was. We saw that improvement from him when I went back and actually watched him, which I don't recommend doing, just generally watching 2013-14 New York Jets. But he managed to improve with the situation around him not really improving.
And I mean, I liked Jeremy Curley, right?
Yeah, I mean, Curley was fun.
I liked it. He was fun, but he ain't Tyler Lockett, right? Like,
he's not Tyler Lockett. So
he's a similar kind of type. There's similarities in their games, but he ain't Tyler Lockett.
He's not Tyler Lockett. So, and then the other element to all of this is, if you go back and isolate the good moments that he had with the Jets, if you go back and isolate them and look at what those concepts are, they're, again, getting explosive in the 20 to 30 yard bracket, some 30 yard plus stuff, 30 plus yards. And then it's concepts that just so happen to be, which they didn't run a lot of for interesting reasons, concepts that just so happen to be the meat and potatoes of the Rams drop back game. So in essence, they're building the whole boat out of what Geno does best right now. And if you're Geno, you're probably thinking, I'm running an offense that on paper is my ideal offense. And then I have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Noah Fant to throw to. And then also I have a yak threat. If he's nothing else, if he's nothing beyond that, he's still an incredible yak threat in D. Eskridge. And if you watch Geno at West Virginia, I mean, he loves getting the ball into Von Austin's hand on 5-yard in routes, on those shallow routes, leading them, like getting the most out of them, with yards after the catch. So he's probably thinking, this is the best situation for me that I've had in a while. He did take a lot of sacks in New York. If you look at his sack percentage in Seattle, it's still high. But his sack percentage when they go into gun, which is almost a purely drop back situation, very little play action right now with they're going to do this year. You might see a little bit of it. His sack percentage was lower than any Russ year, and it was actually lower than any of Goff's years in shotgun with the Rams. And Goff does a pretty good job of getting the ball out. So those sacks were coming in under center. And that's where they need the protection, needed to clean it up. And that's where Geno needs to not try to scramble when it isn't there. But in dropback scenarios, he can function like they want him to. The rest is, can the structure provide space for him to do that? And is the receiving talent there for it all come together? But I don't see, it should fascinate people. If you can create a top 5 passing efficiency offense with Jared Goff, that should open your people's mind up to, can Seattle's offense approach the median? Can it approach average?
And then if you can do it with Geno Smith, then with the escalation of quarterback contracts and guys like Kyler Murray getting paid where he's, got these requirements for film watching,
right.
Does that, beg the question? Is there a different way of doing it? It would be very exciting if it was like Madden, right, and you could just keep recycling at quarterback.
Right. But, I'm not going to compel anybody into thinking he's going to be something specific.
Well, no.
But we should be
Kirk
compelled.
Is he, Griff? Is he? Yeah. Because what you described is very Kirk-like, right? Or am I? Am I
exactly? So I think he is in between as a quarterback talent. He's in between, somewhere existing between Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield as an overall physical talent and quarterback. So combine that talent with process that we saw a snippet of. Actually, I'll just answer the question. I tweeted he's 0.88 Kirks, which is highly scientific, but we need more data. That I'm seeing spikes north and south of that. So he's right in there. So you take that, it's all a formula. The inputs are, you got Geno, you've got the talent around him. A lot hinges on Charles Cross having a Rashawn Slater-esque rookie year, because rookie tackles, Ben Baldwin's done a lot of work on that, showing that the rookie tackles, even ones that end up becoming all pros, they are not spectacular their first year. And we see a big year 2, year 3 jump. Rashawn Slater is one of the few exceptions where they're great right out of the gate. Look at Penei Sewell. It took him to like the 3rd month of the season where he started to look like his college self. Granted, he's playing out of position probably at right tackle, but a lot could swing positively if Charles Cross kind of comes out of the gate playing like peak Dwayne Brown. If they can just get that left tackle play, and of course the right tackle situation, same thing goes there, because there's a strong chance it's Abraham Lucas, but it's still going to be a young player no matter what. So
yeah. All right, so let's move on to Hustle Tilson. Great follow on Twitter if you haven't followed him already. If the Seahawks have a good offense this season with Geno at quarterback, do you think Shane Waldron is still the offensive coordinator next season? Matty?
Well, no. But what I would say is, I definitely no, because of how popular the kind of McVay system, whatever that is, it has been. However, what I would say is if Geno has a good year at quarterback, if the Seahawks have a good offense this season with Geno at quarterback, it is likely because their run game has popped and the run action, right? For all of what we've said about Geno. So, and the run game is not as fashionable at the moment, and people may think it's just an aberration. So perhaps not, but I mean, what were there? 9 coaching vacancies last, 9 head coach vacancies last cycle, and I feel teams would find it very difficult to pass up on doing that. But then it's all about marketing, and Shane Waldron's kind of boring in press conferences, so that's mean.
Yeah.
But and people may be paused after what happened with Russell, even though that wasn't necessarily bad. It just wasn't great, and it wasn't really Waldron's fault, but I don't know. I'd say very unlikely.
Yeah, if they exceed expectations, which I don't know, expectations are bottom 3rd offense though. I don't know. Can you put together?
This says good offense, so I mean, good offense is like top 5, top 10.
By definition, I think that could just be above average. If they're scoring at a clip between,
so top 15.
Yeah, if they're scoring at a clip between the 10 and 15th points, I mean, that's probably, if they're doing that and winning, those things together, if they're doing that and like they're somehow win 9-10 games, which they probably won't, then that he probably gets hired away. But so I don't know. It's all about expectation management with all of this. It's all about perception.
Do you want to know who the 15th offense in EPA was per StatMuse last season?
Browns? Who?
Oh, this isn't an EPA. Damn it.
Well,
how about in just total offensive yards? It was the Patriots.
No. Let's do, okay. Let's look at offensive points per drive, though, which measures what actually happened, not how you got there.
Mm-hmm. This is great.
This is very good.
Hold on.
So 16th was Minnesota, 15th was Seattle in points per drive. Tennessee 14th.
But people didn't say Seattle was a good offense. I think to say someone has a good offense, it has to be above average. Like, it has to be above average.
Yeah, no, you're right. So
I think
it has to
10.
be like top 10. I would say.
All right, yeah. So that's Arizona. Indy was 9th in points with Carson Wentz. That's incredible. They're going to be very good this year with Matt Ryan and Reich. All right, anyway.
So he's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, Waldron's absolutely gone. Yeah, if he does that with Geno Smith, you kidding me? Yeah, he's out of here.
Well.
In a good way. Like.
Yeah. And then Canales finally gets the offensive coordinator at that point.
There you go. All right. So next question.
0.88 Kirks. Oh shit. Shoot.
Nice. Hustle Chilson again
around here.
Absolutely. I mean, we're technically a free agent pod right now, so I think we can say whatever we want for now until the corporate overlords, want to invest at some point. Who sleeps more, Matty F. Brown or Russell Wilson? S. Hustle Chilson.
Ooh.
Who answers this? Because
I think we should save your answer last.
Right, because if you guys know, that's quite disturbing.
So I know how much you sleep.
Right.
Okay. Well, all right. So we know Russ does the thing like where he sleeps 5 to 6 hours every night. Then Saturday or Friday or Saturday night he sleeps like 10 to 12, which all sleep sciences don't do that. Get your square 8 if you can. But now, guys, Matty will explain. Matty's on like this weird this Michelangelo like sleep every 3-hour nonsense, but he kind of has to for his job because he lives in 3 different time zones. But go ahead, Matty. Are you out sleeping Russell Wilson? Oh, let's do the math. He's sleeping 46 hours a week. Are you sleeping 46 hours a week?
I think it's not about how much you sleep, it's about the quality of sleep, right? And I think Russell probably has these fancy chambers where you get like 5 times the sleep that you should, because
you need the deep
chamber.
It costs like $1 million to have this like chamber.
All right.
Whereas I'm on an IKEA mattress.
But the question was,
yeah, we weren't asking about the quality.
We're not looking at efficiency. We're looking at volume.
Yeah, quantity over quality here.
I think the moment that you start paying attention to how much you're sleeping is the moment you feel tired.
So, Matty, answer this question honestly. When's the last time you slept at least 7 hours in a row?
At least 7 hours
in a row.
So this is the thing. Like, I think I don't want to shatter
just
the
won't
illusion.
answer the question.
You can't answer the question.
I don't want to shatter the illusion, but I do have to sleep, 8 hours at times, because otherwise you get burnt out.
Okay. So you indulge every once in a while.
Yeah, kind of like Russell. That's such a good idea.
It's not.
Are you sure it was Russell who told you that, not me?
Yeah, you need. I struggle to be to reach 8. I'm usually like 7 hours.
Mm.
But I've noticed that when I'm below 7, buddy, I can't do anything.
I'm the same.
Matty's a grind set YouTuber.
Your players need you. You're a coach. They need you at your highest mental acuity. Your cognitive powers are being diminished.
Your failure to sleep is a failure to your players.
Yeah.
So part of the issues here is like you have Seahawks things like, for instance, training camp. They start at 10 p.m. training camp, and even though I'm not at training camp, it is quite useful to pay attention to what the beat reporters are tweeting, the videos, the rogue shots of play sheets, all that stuff. That finishes at like midnight my time. Then there's the press conferences, which is worth watching, transcribing. So that finishes at like 1:30 in the morning. Okay.
Sure.
Now, at this point, you then need to sort of plan out your content and what you're going to do. And you'll have had a bit of coffee to stay awake. So then that takes you to like 5 a.m., right? And then to then sleep, you need to, because you're highly caffeinated, you need to eat something. And so then you need to cook something, right? Which is at 7 a.m., right? Jeez. Then if you're living with, a special someone, right? And they then wake up for work, they set their alarm at sort of 8 a.m. So you've been to sleep for an hour and then their alarm wakes you up. So then you wake up with them to ask them how their day's going, okay? And then you might make them breakfast, okay? You see the issue. So
you're working a full hold up. You're working a full graveyard shift, and then you're making your significant other breakfast.
Yeah. So
that's
that's
earning you points, I hope.
So then you go back to sleep, right? But you don't want to overdo the sleep because otherwise you'll feel groggy. So then you sort of wake up at sort of 2 p.m., 1 p.m., and you get a bit of sunlight, which is good for you. Like if you don't get sun, you'll get depressed. Okay, it's bad.
Right.
And your skin will be awful. You'll be a vampire.
I take vitamin. Do you take vitamin D? Do they have that in England? Supplements.
What's
Oh please, come on.
Vitamin. I'm not familiar with it. I know what a vitamin is.
Okay, it's another long valve, short valve situation here. So the grammarians can get.
So do you have any vitamin D?
Are you taking vitamin D?
That was quite good.
Taking vitamin D.
Yeah, that's not bad. You can stop now. Then where did we get to? Oh yeah, then you have breakfast, right? At like 1, 2. Then you do your shopping, like get your food shopping or something. Then you have to do your work. So that's from like 2 till like 10, right? So 8 hours, and then it's the Seahawks training camp again.
Now, in the past, you've done all that, but then also written for sites whose operators are operating on East Coast time.
Yeah. So, like right now, while you're a free agent, how do you feel that's going to impact your sleep?
Well, that's a great question. It depends what sort of deadlines you're trying to meet. Also, if you're sort of watching the NFL Sunday, that's from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. But then you need to plan out content. And it's quite difficult, guys.
So we've established that both you and Russell Wilson are suffering from sleep deprivation. But the question is, who sleeps more? So who's suffering from sleep deprivation less?
Honestly, after hearing Matty's like breakdown, like his day to day, I think Russell Wilson is getting more sleep than Matty right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Matty,
and also there's no way you're getting any REM with caffeine rifling through your bloodstream.
Right.
REM.
Yeah.
Are you familiar?
Yeah, that's the good stuff. That's like the deep sleep, rapid eye movement. So your eyes are just all over the place.
But when you do get it, it's really good. It's like it's like Inception.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So do you guys ever have dreams where you're dreaming within the dream? It's like, or actually, no. You're conscious that you're dreaming in the dream. Like you're having a dream, something's happening, and you're like in the dream, you're aware, like, oh, this is a dream, but you're still asleep. And then you hop to another dream, and then you're like, oh, is this a dream too? Actually,
Griff, you're not a very good Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, that's not. Oh, he is in Inception.
Yeah, he is in Inception.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
he
it's
totally
them who explains the whole thing, right?
With Leo and Elliot Page. And I forgot the other actor's name. Ken something.
Oh, Ken Watanabe.
Yeah, I need to rewatch that movie.
He's the best.
Yeah. And then the guy who's in Peaky Blinders and he was in Batman.
Cillian Murphy.
That's right. Maddie, where are you on pronouncing C's as hard C's versus soft C's?
Well,
is that Old Gaelic? Is Cillian a Gaelic name, Irish Gaelic? Because then he's Irish, right?
Yeah. Yes, I think so.
Interesting.
Where am I at with it? Well, it depends what the word is, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If I was going to call you then I would go for a hard C, I think.
Yeah. Interesting. And the Welsh
fricatives.
So,
yes.
Is that an expletive or is that a grammar thing?
It's a grammar thing. I think it's for hard C's.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Now the Welsh have retained quite a bit of old Gaelic or old Celtic components of language, right?
Fricatives aren't for hard C's. I'm sorry about that.
Oh.
What about plosives? Plosives might work. The Welsh have a thing with a what?
Don't they have a lot of native Welsh language that they just kind of intersperse into everyday speech because that's still a thing?
Those Welsh.
The Welsh.
Yeah, we're just generalizing a whole. I mean, I'm sure some Welsh people
do. It's charming. It's not a bad thing. It's like
generally most Welsh people are basically you wouldn't be able to tell. You wouldn't be able to tell.
Okay.
You simpleton.
But I do think, like, linking this back to kind of where we started right at the start, I do think there's been a bit more of a push for them, as a country to be proud of being Welsh and learn Welsh a bit more because the language is legit dying out.
Is it? Shoot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of actually. So you know how we talk about how, I don't know if we talk about it, but in geneticists and anthropologists and stuff, there's a huge debate raging right now about the formation of modern day Britain, England, etc., and how we always assume how the when the Romans left, there is a massive influx of Germanic migration, and then of course after that the Vikings came and then the Normans came, right, etc., right? But there's a recent pushback that there was never actually a mass migration of Germanic people that actually populated England, modern day England, UK, before the Normans came. And what happened was not so much a literal migration, but a cultural migration, that after the Romans left, that they just adopted Anglo-Saxon culture. And there was also like Northern Europe was like the hotbed of like trade at the moment. So they were trading like artifacts and stuff and Anglo-Saxon made items, and those items essentially there was cultural trade, language trade exchange, and so it was more of a anyway. It's a debate raging. So that
when you say it's a debate raging, is this you've seen people on Reddit talking about it?
No, I've seen it's like I've seen documentaries on it. They're saying that they're saying that England was never ever Anglo-Saxon, even though England means Anglo. They're saying the English aren't English, basically. They're saying that they were always outside of the general migration patterns that happened in Europe. They're saying that England never actually underwent something seismic until the Danish and Norman invasions.
Oh, because
so effectively that they're native Britons.
that
genetically.
sounds like it could get dangerously right wing, and
well, no, it's actually counter right wing, because right wing extremists in England are harping around their so-called Aryan ancestry, Anglo-Saxon ancestry.
yes.
So to say that you're actually native British, you're not Anglo-Saxon, is actually a repudiation of right wing white national ethno-nationalism.
Nice.
So it's actually much the opposite, and it's embracing, but also it embraces cultural exchange. To say you're native English or native British, but then you adopted Anglo-Saxon culture at that time, demonstrates how cultures combining can be like a great thing, and that also aids anti-immigrant sentiment, pro-immigrant sentiment. So
indeed,
check out the documentary. It's interesting.
What was the documentary called?
What? Yeah.
Let me find out.
All right. While you're doing that,
I know you guys are all very fascinated by this.
We're learning so much on the show. Honestly, I feel very enlightened.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners right now feel very enlightened. We do have one more question after you find out the title of this documentary. I can start to ask it though while you're figuring that out. This final question, this fateful final question, comes from @C Sports Bros. Where does the Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams safety combo rank in the league? And this is the reason why we put this in the offensive portion of our Q&A. Is it higher or lower than the DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett combo? Maddie, I'll start with you.
I don't watch enough of other safeties to properly answer this, but that doesn't stop other people making bold proclamations, does it? So, I don't know. I think you can say Lockett Metcalf is top 3. And I think you can say Adams Diggs is at the lowest, top 5.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we're saying that I'm saying it's lower, but that's not really. I mean, at their best, they're both the best in the league,
right?
So it's kind of and I think it's easier to kind of do this for wide receivers than it is for safeties, because I think wide receivers are more. I think offenses around the league are much more similar. Like they're all running the same concepts. Now defenses do that too, but like the year-to-year variance of defensive scheme, I think, is probably higher across the league, but also on different teams where they're having to do something because their corners aren't very good, or they're having to do something because their pass rush sucks. Whereas, like, if a quarterback's bad, like the receivers are still going to be running similar routes, unless, right, like Russell Wilson leaves. But like, you're going to run a go route with every quarterback, right? I don't know. Did that make sense?
What do you think is the receiving core's floor this year in terms of ranking? Like the duo?
Probably
3.
Floor is 3.
Yeah.
Because if enough situations go right, with there being such an abundance of receivers, you could get leapfrogged without actually being worse than you are, and guys developing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think I would put floor like 6th or 7th, but ceiling I would put
1,
second or 3rd. I mean, 1 is tough just because some of these, there's a couple teams that just have an absurd 1-2 punch. Well, actually, well, the Bucks. I mean, actually, you're right. The Bucks, Evans and Godwin are. Yeah, I mean, Kupp A-Rob has the potential to be number 1. Also, I mean, if A-Rob has, a bounce back season, then you've got.
So that's 2.
Honestly, though,
so that's a 3 floor.
You have the best 9 route runner in the whole league in DK Metcalf, and then you have
Tyreek
Lockett.
And Jalen.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's
anyway.
I feel like floor is probably like 7.
The Broncos with
Broncos have a lot of talent, unrealized potential.
It's like it's unclear who the 2 will be.
Yeah, I mean
the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, like if you really like Devontae.
Yeah, I think the Eagles, the Raiders, because our guy, not Devontae Adams. The Raiders is a good answer if you can look over the fact that they have like a balding white receiver,
right?
Who was productive last year, but like the thing with Metcalf and Lockett is they're literally like so obviously one, like the 2, right? Like they're both gonna get loads of targets. They're the clear. Whereas like if you look at most of the situations around the league, it's unclear who that 2 will be. Like there's a few candidates for it on each team, but like, and it's not through Seattle not having receivers in other spots. Like Eskridge, it has exciting possibilities, even though you could also see him kind of not work out. It's not like Seattle's lacking though in the wide receiver 3 depth. It's just Lockett and Metcalf are both. They're both kind of ones, right? They're like ones. Right. So they're just clearly the 1 and 2. But like I don't think across the league there's a situation like that.
Right.
Which is why their ceiling's obviously the best in the league. Like.
Right. Yeah. So the name of the documentary, guys, is called King Arthur Director's Cut, directed by Antoine Fuqua. Just kidding. It's called The Mystery of the Sutton Hoo Anglo-Saxon Helmet, King Arthur's Britain. It's part of the timeline series that...
I've been to Sutton Hoo.
Have you? Interesting.
I was a very naughty boy, and I didn't get... I was like kicking off about... I was quite young, and I was being a little rascal with my brother. I think I went with my granny, and I think there was something to do with a shop and wanting to buy some Viking thing. And
interesting,
it's great. You should go. You'd love it.
I'd love to visit it.
All that history and
for sure.
Did you get the Viking thing?
No. I was being a little rascal,
Matthew,
little rascal.
Matthew, stop kicking about. Get back in line, please. Queue up, please.
Stop faffing about.
We're in line. We're not running about. Matthew, get in the queue.
Okay, are we done here?
Yeah.
Queue.
And scene.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening or watching on YouTube. Please do like the tweet, retweet the tweet, subscribe to my YouTube channel, give us 5-star ratings, because we have enough on Spotify to show up and we have enough on Apple to show up, but each 5-star rating does help us, as does leaving a little comment saying Griff and Ty really upset me with their bad British accents. However, Matty's actual legitimate British accent made up for it. 5-star review. And you can please do also follow the podcast on Twitter. Thanks for your questions. We'll have the rest of them, the defensive ones, next episode. Maybe a bit less Viking talk, maybe a bit more bear talk.